Today we're going to take a look at quite a few different weeping conifers, or conifers that have a pendulous weeping habit. And we're going to start out with gold drift Norway spruce. This has a brighter yellow color in the spring. It does maintain that yellow look throughout the summer, but it does fade into a little bit more of a kind of a greenish. But I tried one of these several years ago, didn't make it through the first winter, but I just love conifers with that yellow in the landscape. Something that's going to be a little bit more reliable then is just the standard weeping Norway spruce. These are really thick, a nice rich green. There's one from the other angle. And the Norway spruce, depending on how you get them from the growing range, you can either start them at like a 2 foot, 3 foot, up to a 6, even 8 foot level by staking that central leader. Once you remove that support, that's where you're going to start getting that arching. Here's what I've got growing in our landscape, and it's been there several years. I'm starting to get a little bit of a, I don't know, dieback or some dead branches in there. I fear that I've got a sprinkling head that's been hitting it 2 to 3 times a week, so I'm going to move that so it's not getting that direct water on the foliage so often. But I went in here and I cleaned up quite a few of these dead branches, and it really made it look a lot better. So I highly recommend that if you start getting dead growth on conifers such as this. And after it was all cleaned up, look at that. Yeah, there's no more dead in there. You can see the buds now are just starting to kind of swell and come out of spring dormancy. And this is a video I did. I called it Corner Landscaping Ideas. I'll put that in the description if you kind of want to see what some of these other varieties are in here. And we just finished doing some top dressing on that mulch. So the Norway spruce, it's a good, reliable, hardy one for the northern Great Plains, the Midwest areas. After I finished that video, towards the tail end, I had this bird bath that I love the bird bath. It's got this rusty metal on it with a chrome top and then a perching point for the birds in it. I finally, I think, found the location that it fits in there quite well under this weeping Norway spruce. And I think the conifers, especially some of the shorter ones, the more unique ones, they do offer some winter interest because they get that mounding snow on the top of the tufts. The cones too, if you're ever trying to identify different pines, different spruce, different conifers, the cone is one of the most descriptive things you can look for. The Norway spruce cones are some of the larger ones in my area. I did a video a while back on a Black Hills spruce where we compared the Black Hills spruce, which is a white spruce, the Colorado spruce, the Norway spruce, but I'm always looking at the different cones to see if I can identify what I'm looking at. Here we've got red cone Norway spruce. I don't know if this would be considered a true weeper, but it's definitely got a bit of a pendulous or drooping habit. Just a fantastic little conifer. Here's a picture of it, that same one from another angle, and you see it's got a little bit of a mounding effect where it sprawls out. This works great on slopes, cascading over walls. And the reason it gets its name, red cone Norway spruce, is due to that bright red color that you see. That emerges in the spring, and it's just really fun to watch. Makes that conifer incredibly unique. Great plant. It doesn't always work out, and so when you're watching YouTube videos and you think, man, I wish I could do that, I've had my fair share, especially in the conifers, of, well, plants that just die. This happens to be bush lace Engelmann spruce, and I love the coloring on this. It's got kind of a softer bluish green. Yeah, isn't that a beautiful one right there? Mine only lasted one winter, tried 2 of them, and they both died out the first winter. So I started thinking, well, maybe it's not hardy. Maybe it's a zone 5 plant. I'm zone 4. But boy, some of the more reputable sites that sell conifers are actually listing this as a zone 3. So I think I'll give it another shot. That first plant, by the way, that we looked at, the Norway spruce, I'm pretty sure this is the parent plant, a Norway spruce. And one of the things about the Norway spruce that gets quite large is just a dramatic pendulous habit coming off that main branch. You can just see how it's drooping down there. Here's one I found in my area that's doing pretty good, a little bit closer into the city. Looks like it's picked up a bit of a crook. I wonder if they didn't have a little bit of winter injury. Maybe it died back a little bit and then took off from that point. And just a little bit too, if you look up on the hill there, that's a weeping white spruce. That's going to be one of the next ones that we look at. And there it is. Yeah, I've got a beautiful weeping white spruce in our landscape. One of my absolute favorite plants that we have growing. And coming in for just a little bit closer look when it flushes out in the spring. A little bit different color, a little bit lighter, and that'll harden off into a little bit deeper green. I have a couple more growing in our landscape. One of them I lost, so I initially had 3. This one's doing pretty good in a different location. Unfortunately, I did not pay close enough attention to the fact that it's not getting, I don't think, enough sun anymore. Some of the flowering crabs that it's planted next to are shading it most of the day. It picks up good early morning sun, maybe just a little evening sun, but throughout the day, that south sun, it's just getting blocked from this flowering crabapple. So you can see that thin growth in there, a little bit of needle shed, just not as vigorous as I'd like it to be. The other weeping white spruce I was talking about, initially when I put it in this area with our water feature, we've got a beautiful rustic metal arbor, and I wanted it to cascade through the opening. You can see it back in here, how that would have made just a dramatic statement. But this is how it came out, I believe after the second winter. And every winter it would go into this decline, it would winter burn, and then it would flush out in the spring. You can see just kind of have just partial buds would break dormancy. And then finally, I think after it was maybe the 4th or 5th season, that growth there too, throughout the summer, it just completely just lost all the foliage. So for whatever reason, the root system, the plant in general, just didn't take. So that was unfortunate. Weeping Colorado spruce, what I love about this plant is just that arm that you see here, how it just came up, and the support stake was probably removed at that height, and then that arm will just take off. And there, that gives you just a little bit of context with me standing there. That's about a 7 to 8 foot between the main stem, and it's now starting to encroach on this yellow arborvitae. So I've got a conifer garden that this is in, and it's starting to get a little bit congested, but I still like the look of it. And just again, winter interest, it just shows you how that snow can kind of pile up on the top. I think it offers just something really enjoyable to look at for the winter season. There we've got the blues weeping Colorado, and you can see it has that same shelf that mine had, and now it started to arch up. So perhaps I'm going to also see that type of habit, and I look forward to seeing what happens. And just a couple more. I happened to talk to this homeowner, and he laughed when he said to this. He likes it, and I liked it, but it's a little bit out of the ordinary, not for everybody. I just love this setting. This is Glauca pendula. That's the variety of this blue weeping spruce that you see in here. And the combination here is what I just love this setting with the different juniper getting up into possibly a dwarf Norway type spruce, one of the false cypress, and then the backdrop with maybe a white pine. Again, maybe that Norway spruce, a larch. So many different things going on here. Beautiful setting, but that's a nice plant to plant with that blue contrast, the Glauca pendula. And a close-up of that really caught my eye. Love how that was put together. Here we've got Gotelli Serbian spruce. This is in that front conifer garden next to that weeping white that wasn't doing as well on the shaded side of those flowering crab apples. But you can see again a pendulous type habit, not maybe a full weeping. This one also a little bit of a dieback I get in that after each winter. But I've got one on the other side of my house doing just wonderful here. And I've got a video that I did on just Serbian spruce. If you really like the Serbian spruce, I'll put that in the description along with the other ones that I mentioned. And the sun behind it there, you kind of, I guess, really highlights that branching that comes out, and then that pendulous weeping habit. And a little bit of a close-up here. I did another video that this reminds me that I did some lower branch pruning on like that Japanese tree lilac. I actually cut off quite a few of these that were encroaching on the pathway, but I guess I would not have had to worry about it because this winter, this is what I came to find after some of the snow has started to melt down. The rabbits got in here and have just absolutely devoured these lower branches. Look at how they've just stripped it completely. And the only choice I'm probably going to have on this is just to prune up these lower branches and create, I don't know, a little bit of a trunk look to it. It's not what I was hoping I'd ever have to do. We'll come a little bit closer in here, and you can see just all the droppings in there. So for whatever reason this year, they really went after the Serbian spruce. This is a bronze Serbian spruce. I tried I think 2 of this spruce before I finally got one to take. This burned up the first winter. And so I ended up buying one that was about 6 to 7 feet tall, considered a specimen type Serbian spruce, was doing wonderful in this location. I thought I got one that's going to take. And then after, I think it was the second winter, we had a lot of conifer burning in our area. And I was hopeful that the buds on this were going to be good. And sure enough, they were. It came back very nice, still doing very well. This is the winter color, but once again, that Serbian spruce is a favorite of rabbits apparently, and they've just absolutely devoured those lower branches. So if you look back here again, look at the way they were right there and how much that they've eaten and the different amount of needles that they've taken off there. So here again, I'll just end up pruning up these lower branches, maybe plant some perennials under there, and eventually the lower branches will grow and hopefully fold down and make it look a little bit more back to its natural state. This is another bronze Serbian that I found at an arboretum, so I don't know if mine's eventually going to do a crazy little offshoot or crook like that. Maybe it had some bird damage, maybe something knocked that leader off, but very interesting, very unique. Next one up that we're going to look at, if you look back here, this is one of the weeping juniper varieties, and that's something I really want to get my hands on, some of the different weeping junipers. I don't grow one of those yet. Here's another one I came across at a different research arboretum, weeping needle juniper. Again, I like the look of that. Here's a little bit more of a close-up of that. At first I thought this might have been a hemlock, and we can't grow hemlock in our area. They're not hardy enough. I don't think we have acidic enough soil. I've tried some smaller shrub form ones. But the hemlocks also, if you like weeping conifers, that's a great group to do some research, see if you can find some in that. But this had that, I thought, kind of similar look. And there's a close-up of the characteristic juniper berries that you get with juniper. And getting into some of the white pine weeping varieties. I think there's quite a few varieties out there. Here again, the white pine tend to want a little bit more acidic soil. I'm surprised how well this is doing. It's actually in the northern Great Plains where we have a neutral to higher pH. And this variety here is Niagara Falls Eastern white pine. The white pine have a really soft needle, quite long on certain varieties. Similar, I think, to some of the Swiss stone pines, but they're a little bit shorter, softer needle. And one more white pine variety here. This is Angel Falls white pine. And again, just a completely, I think, different look in the conifer group compared to the short needles you get on the Colorado spruce, the Serbian spruce. So that longer needle just creates a different effect completely. Let's go ahead now, we'll take a look at some of the different larch varieties. The larch are a deciduous evergreen, meaning they drop their needles in the fall. They do have a nice yellow fall color, which I think is, I really look forward to that, so it doesn't bother me that they drop their needles. But here again, in my landscape, I had this weeping larch, accumulated a lot of dead growth in there, so I just wasn't happy with how it was looking anymore. So I went in and I got in there, and I pruned out a lot of that dead growth. I've got a video on this as well where this whole process that we pruned out that dead growth. And what I ended up doing, I didn't want to cut that branch there. So I put this gray trap rock boulder there to kind of make it look like it fit, so to speak, rather than just having that branch out there all on its own. And this is another larch. This is Varied Directions larch. And I bet that's 20, maybe 25 feet. That just goes a long ways. I'm not sure how old this is. It could be in the neighborhood of 40, 50 years old possibly. There's a little bit closer look at that larch foliage. And this is Horseman's Recurved. Now this may be a little bit of a stretch as calling it a weeping or pendulous habit, but they do get a lot of the branches, they arch down. And the interesting thing about the recurved larch is it's got kind of a contorted or a twisted branch along with that pendulous arching down habit. So a very, very unique plant right there, the Horseman's Recurved larch. And that's the yellow fall color on one of the upright larches. So you get that same yellow color even on the weeping varieties. Okay, the Quebec weeping cedar, one of my favorites growing in our landscape, again has that arching, cascading, just a unique green there, just a soft, what I'm going to call arborvitae green. Love this tree that we've got growing here, and a close-up of the foliage there. I recently removed this dogwood that just kind of came up on its own. It was a random, I suppose, a bird ate one of the dogwood berries and up it came. So now we've given that a little bit more room to fill out and grow in there. Now we're getting into the false cypress, that beautiful golden yellow. And this variety is Aurea pendula sawara false cypress, the Campsiparis genus. But I don't know, this one always, when I see these, your eyes are immediately drawn to them. You want to get over and see what it's all about. But a just beautiful yellow foliage throughout the entire season. Here again, I've been somewhat successful growing smaller shrub form, but haven't had any luck with some of the larger ones. This variety is King's Gold. Another one looking very similar, Gold Spangle. And just look at that contrast in there with that yellow next to some of these different conifers growing. And I have over the years, I've experimented with several different conifers that I determined that, you know, they're not hardy, so I'm just going to grow them, leave them in their containers, put them in a different, maybe a rustic pot like you see here. This is Russian cypress. And it's not a weeping plant, but you get that weeping effect because you've lifted it up and those branches are not going to grow along the ground. So this is normally just about a 2-foot shrub that would hover along the ground, but as soon as we expose that trunk and let those branches arch out, it looks like a weeping plant. So I overwinter this artificially every year. I put it under some tarps. I've been able to put it back and forth in here, and it's done wonderful now for, I would bet, almost 5 years. But it doesn't always work out. This is an Alaskan blue weeping cedar. I was overwintering this the same, putting it under that tarp. And one season when I took it out, it had quite a bit of injury on it, and it never did recover from that. It just went mostly into decline, so I ended up having to get rid of it. But another way to highlight those weeping plants in your gardens, in your landscape, by putting them in those different containers. So the way I look at it with some of these different conifers like that is you can spend a lot of money on flowering annuals, hundreds of dollars on some bigger pots. I figure, well, why not drop $100, $150 into something like that and see if you can get 4 or 5 years out of it. That brings us back to the beginning where we started on the Norway spruce, that gold drift. So that's all I've got for now on the weeping conifers, conifers with pendulous habits that grow in the northern cold climates. Thanks for stopping by Garden Hike. I appreciate it. We'll see you again next video.